and switch the microphone on this time. Welcome, YouTube and Twitch. And I'm also on Discord and the Tiki Talkie. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Geeky never sticks around. No, no, no. Geeky's ADHD takes them to have any of you ever read Terry Pratchett's Equal Rights? You know, like how Esk and Granny Weatherwax can borrow people's or like things, bodies, and all of those kinds of things. Geeky is a side quest, and I love them so dearly. But Geeky is the side quest. So we are still on chapter 4 because chapter 4 is a very, very long one. Last week we were talking about the things like the World Economic Forum, the World Social Forum, and needing to move beyond the globalization narrative. And so now we get to the question that is being asked to Arundhati Roy. We are reading The Architecture of Modern Empire on Twitch and YouTube. It's on the site. Interviews with Arundhati Roy, my favorite writer of all time, and highly skilled writer. And I love the way she talks about imperialism because she just really captures the essence of what imperialism actually is. So she is asked, beyond the immediate excitement of being with people from many, many countries, thank you, what value is there in gatherings like the World Social Forum? Earlier you suggested that maybe we need to move beyond the marches and the typical demonstrations. And yes, I feel like we do need to move beyond the marches and typical demonstrations. And I think if Ash is here, she would agree with me as well that something like No Kings, it's not a protest, that is a demonstration. So she says, there's a tremendous value in the World Social Forum, and it has been central to making us feel that there is another world. It's not just possible, it's there. But I think it's important that we don't sap all our energies in organizing this one event. It's an act of celebration of solidarity, but it's for us. It's not a strike against them. If you want to send out 1 million emails and enjoy the World Social Forum, you can. But let's reserve our energies for the real fight. And this is what I continue to say constantly. The real fight is not with waving placards because it has its space. It absolutely has its place. Demonstrations have their place. That real fight is waiting to happen now. We need to clearly demarcate the battle lines. We cannot take on empire in its entirety. We have to dismantle its working parts and take them on one by one. We can't use the undirected spray of machine gun fire. We need the cold precision of an assassin's bullet. I don't mean this literally. I'm talking about nonviolent resistance. Well, she has to. But I also truly believe, and I don't know, Super Solid, if you're still here, you have heard me say it before, that a person who believes that violence is never the answer has never had to fight for their lives. Yes, in a sense, but I'll get to that in a minute, Moss. We need to pick our targets and hit them one by one. It's not possible to take on empire in a huge epic sense, because we simply don't have the kind of power or reach or equipment to do that. We need to have an agenda and we need to direct it. And that is why I work so hard with BDS, because it has 3 main objectives: boycott, divest, sanction. And I am part of the divestment group, urging private companies to divest their business interests in Israeli companies. Universities and cultural organizations divesting, working with, and financial links with Israeli universities and companies. Not working with Israeli artists, not taking their artists to Israel. So I came across this, yes, BDS is a phenomenal movement because it is directed. It has clear goals. If you go to the BDS website, it does say not everything can be boycotted. In fact, there's a whole article that I wrote on there about how we cannot give up our own health to do this. You need to be alive for the movement to stay alive. A movement is only as good as the people who make it a movement. So if there is, so just say CVS were to get onto the boycott list, I'm sure it should be in some way, shape, or form. And your medication is cheapest at CVS, don't stop buying your medication from CVS. Don't stop buying your medication from Dischem. Don't stop doing the things that keep you alive. If the only thing that you can afford is fast food, and the closest fast food place to you is a Burger King, because fast food, for some odd reason, in the US is cheaper than fresh food, make it make sense. Go and have the Burger King. Eat. Access the food, access the medication that you need to. However, remember that all of the unnecessary things that you do not need to survive, please try your damnedest to cut them out. Starbucks lost billions over the past 3 years. McDonald's too. Coca-Cola, they don't release their financials, their international financials, so we don't know. But I'm sure that they've taken a huge hit. Absolutely, JJ. But my point is, we direct our attention, and not everybody can and is able to fight on every front. We cannot fight on every front. We learned this from one of the worst strategists in wartime history. You cannot fight on every front. I'm not saying that we shouldn't take up Luigi's mantle. You know, because Luigi did nothing wrong. And I am talking about the plumber. 100% talking about the plumber. But I'm also saying that we need to target our attention where it hits them the hardest. And that's their profit margins. So, question. At a press conference in New York, the day before your Riverside Church speech, you said, we have to harm them. In what way we can harm them? Do we stop buying their cars? Do we stop traveling on their planes? And so she responds, player 2 Luigi needs a player 1. Exactly. I got Flash Go. And please do remember, I do these readings for free. So if you can, please hit up the goal. It is 90 and links are in my link tree. She says, first of all, we have to understand that we cannot be pure. And this is what I constantly, this is my beef with the leftist communities on TikTok, demanding the sense of purity. Arundhati, if you are against empire, then why are you flying to America? Because we can't do it in any virginal, pristine way. All of us are muddy. All of us are soiled by empire and included in it in some way. We can only do our best. So remember that. Except you be. But certainly I believe that, for instance, A great starting point would be to target a few companies that have been given these kind of reconstruction contracts in Iraq. Shut them down. Just to show ourselves what we can do and that we can do it, if nothing else. And yes, we can. Yes, my shirt says "You are enough." And the back of it says, Maeve! Oh my goodness, we have a tortoise in the chat. Thank you, tortoise. Yes, it says "You are enough" on the front, and the back says, "To the person behind me reading this, the world is better with you in it." The tortoise can talk! Good to see you too, Kindness. So, if Bechdel or Halliburton was trying to establish some business in India, you would think that Indians should boycott them? She says absolutely, but also target their offices around the world and other privatization projects. Target the CEOs and members of the board as shareholders, partners. Let them know that we will not allow them to profit off of the occupation of Iraq. We need to disrupt business as well. It cannot be. Yes, do it while these companies still have physical locations. And this is why every single Friday we are outside Glencore's office. If you are in South Africa in this chat, we are outside Glencore's offices every single Friday, protesting and basically disrupting their day's work. I have. I have to tell you, I'll tell you in VC one of the days about the episode I had to, yes, be a chaos anarchist. There's a reason that my fellow activists here call me a chaos goblin. Because, yes, chaos is fun. But also, it gets shit done. We played drums outside the Israeli embassy. They couldn't work for days. We just sat outside there playing drums. Yes, JJ. These little random acts of mischief, they help. They do things. So it cannot be business as usual, because life isn't business as usual for us on the ground. The biggest theft in the world is wage theft. Kindness, I'm going to beg to differ there. White people aren't angry enough. We've been angry. White people aren't angry enough. The drum sound was promised to them 3,000 years ago. The US Civil Rights Movement was ignited in 1955 by a bus boycott in the city of Montgomery, Alabama. So she says that's the thing. We need to be very specific about what we have to do because we know the score. Enough of being right. We need to win. You felt that massive demonstrations on February 15th made a powerful moral statement. She says, I think so. I think there was a huge difference between the display of public morality on the streets of the world and the vacuous, cynical arguments in the UN Security Council. Who here is of the similar view to me that the UN is an impotent bunch of fools? We all know that they talk about morality by old imperialists was rubbish. The minute war was announced, these supposed opponents of war rushed to say, I hope you win it. But I also think that the demonstration and the peace movement really stripped down empire, which was important. It stripped off the mask. It made it clear what was going on. And if you look at general public opinion or perception of what the US government is about, it's different today. Not enough people knew what the US government was up to all these years. People who studied it knew. Foreign policy scholars knew, ex-CIA people knew, but now it's in the streets. The question here. The National Security Strategy of the United States of America, which formally lays out the doctrine of preemption, actually has the statement in it that the events of September 11th presented the United States with vast new opportunities. I wonder why. She says it did, which is why I keep saying Bush and bin Laden are comrades in arms. But contained in these opportunities are the seeds of destruction. The fact is that here's an empire that, unlike others, has weapons that could destroy the world several times over, and has people at the helm of power who will not hesitate to use them. Yeah. What was the position of the Indian government on the attack of Iraq? It was pretty inexcusable. There was a subdued response in India, because you see, the right-wing Indian government is trying hard to align itself with the Israel-US axis. It always has, it always will. However, Israel and the US are so racist, they're seeing it as this kind of the little brother they hand the controller to, but the controller is unplugged. Mr. Raytheon, I don't think your office is up to the code on fire safety. Yep, let's find out. And yes, what do you mean by that? Ariel Sharon is coming to India to visit quite soon, and the rhetoric against Muslims in the United States locks in with the fascist rhetoric against Muslims in India. Meanwhile, India and Pakistan are behaving like the Begums of Sheikh Bush, competing for his attention. I love how she puts that. Explain what Begum means. A Begum is part of the Sheikh's harem. How much of the traditional Orientalism that Edward Said has written about plays a factor in shaping and forming public opinion about the East, or them, or those people over there? And that is an excellent question. I think outright racism would be a more accurate explanation. Yes. Yes. Outright racism. We are all expendable, easily expendable. Orientalism is a more gentle art. Crude racism is the one that powers all of this. You spoke in New York at the Riverside Church on May 13, 2003. How did you prepare for that, knowing that that church was where Martin Luther King gave his April 4th, 1967 speech opposing the Vietnam War? Now that church is, I think every single person should listen to that speech and visit that church. It was important to me to come to the US to speak at that church. Apart from what I said in the talk, which is available as a text, there was a lot unsaid, which was very political. A black woman from India speaking about America to American audiences in an American church. It's always historically been the other way around. It has always been white people coming to black countries to tell us about ourselves. And here she speaks about black in the political sense, not in the racial sense. And if anybody from there comes here, it's only to tell you about us and what a bad time we're having. But there's something else happening. Citizens of empire want to know what other people think about what that empire is doing. Globalization of dissent begins like this. The process is incredibly important. Whenever we have had a first world leader coming to our countries, black in the political sense is what she's referring to. Because politically, I would be considered black. Racially, I am considered South Asian. Because how it was divided politically in colonized countries was, if you were against empire, you were seen as politically black. Yeah. So black with the capital B. Yes, my baby. He just came, meowed, and left. It is the Dorito. Oh, that was the Dorito. He left. And I think that's so important to understand that whenever we have first world leaders coming to our countries to tell us about ourselves, they're always painting us in the way that they would like to see us. Cats are so weird, honestly. Like my my little cat, the only people in the world she likes are my husband and my sister. And I don't even get it. Like, she hardly ever sees my sister. And yet she's just like, she looks at her adoringly. Yeah. Yeah, they're still not on 100% good terms yet, but they're getting there. They're getting there. Okay. B, can you please share the live with Hayden and tell them that I am live? I am unable to search just yet. We are told that our stories include this, this, and that. These are the only narratives that we have. These are the, thank you so much, B. These are the only options that we have. So, yes, yes, Hayden Hades, yes. So we have a sense of like, this is the only way that we will look at you. Showing up to the embassy as the fire inspector. Crash, I'm going to screenshot that. You don't have enough fire extinguishers for the imperialist PS you're pulling. Oh. So let's look at it in terms of publishing, right? If they are looking at a person from, if an international, especially a publisher based in the first world, is going to look at a manuscript from somebody in the global south, they want a regurgitation of the stories that they knew or they know, and that Orientalist view of the Middle East or the or the or the filthiness of India or the dilapidatedness of Africa. If it doesn't fit the sepia tone of the movie that they're trying to play in their head, they will reject it. And that is the exact same thing that happens when a first world leader or first world personality comes to tell us about this is what your life is like. I was at that lecture when Obama spoke here. I don't know how many of you actually know that colored is not a slur in South Africa. Colored is a race group. The colored race group in South Africa has a very specific kind of culture attached to it. And the way they booed Obama. Oh, yes, because W. Chiara, obviously. The goal is 90. Yeah. His own, what would be considered his community in South Africa, booed him. Black and brown kids booed Obama. Let's just say he was the first president since George Bush Sr. to have dropped so many bombs on African soil without the international community batting an eyelid. You've used the phrase the checkbook and the cruise missile. What do you mean by this? Once you understand the process of corporate globalization, you have to see what happened in Argentina, the devastation of Argentina by the IMF. It is part of the same machine that is destroying Iraq and is now destroying Iran and Palestine. Both efforts are to break open and control markets, and so Argentina is destroyed by the checkbook. Iraq is destroyed by the cruise missile. If the checkbook won't work, the cruise missile will. Hell hath no fury like a market scorned. W.B. Yeats lamented one of his most famous poems that the best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. I think when it comes to you, it's the exact opposite. You have that passionate intensity and the total conviction. Thank you very much. She says, "You're welcome, David. I'm always happy to be flattered." And I think it's important to understand that you have to have conviction. You have to have courage of conviction. And that passionate intensity will only be driven inward as self-hatred if you don't direct it outward toward where it needs to be. Toward the people who need to hear the utter violence of your anger. Yes, that passion is always internalized and like, I cannot, it's kind of this weird impotence of, I don't have the power to do anything, therefore I can only hate myself. With all of this passion that I'm carrying, all of this rage was once love. I'm seeing messages from Hayden coming through. I can't actually see what they're saying. But, yeah. I don't know if they're able to. Okay, we're now getting on to chapter 5. It is 15 minutes left for the reading. I want to go over one of the questions here before I end. I don't know if they're okay. So chapter 5 is called Seize the Time. We're going to have a conversation, perhaps punctuated with some readings by Arundhati Roy. I must confess I'm a little nervous to be doing this. She says he's lying. It's just an act. Yes, please, Moss. I'm nervous because typically we meet and do interviews in the back seats of cars. Our first interview was, in fact, from Amherst to Logan Airport in Boston. It was nerve-wracking to be trying to control the tape recorder as well as my notes flying all over the place, trying to keep a coherent interview going. Be that as it may, here we are and it's wonderful. I'd like to start with a quote from recent interviews, published in the July-August issue of International Socialist Review. The quote was about what the real fight is, and Arundhati Roy said, "We are up against an economic system that is suffocating the majority of people in this world. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to address it?" So I thought that could be a really easy way of getting into this. What are we going to do about it, and how are we going to address it? Thank you so much. That's not fair, she says. I've been in America for 3 days now and obviously have felt the electricity in the air about the coming election. This is in 2004. And just in May, we had an important election in India. I think one of the dangers we face is that it all becomes about personalities and we forget that the system is in place and it doesn't matter at all much who is piloting the machine. So I was saying last night at the American Sociological Association in San Francisco, this whole fierce debate about Democrats and Republicans and whether Bush or Kerry is better, in fact, being asked to choose, it's being asked to choose a detergent. Whether you choose Tide or Ivory Snow, they're both owned by Procter & Gamble. And so first of all, we have to understand that elections are just an apparent choice. I was about to graduate with my first degree. In India, we are faced with far outright fascism with the BJP and a sort of covert communalism that the Congress Party had indulged in for 50 years, preparing the ground in many ways for the right wing to rise. It was the Congress Party that actually opened India's markets to corporate globalization. But the one difference was that in their election campaign, at least they had to lie. At least they had to say that what they were against, that they were against their old policies. But here they don't even give you the dignity of that. The Democrats are not even pretending that they're against wars or against occupation. And I think it's very important because the anti-war movement in America has been so phenomenal, not just to Americans, but all of us around the world. You can't allow them to hijack your beliefs and put your weight behind someone who is openly saying that he believes in the occupation, that he would have attacked Iraq, even if he had known there were no weapons of mass destruction, that he would actually get UN cover for the occupation, and he would try and get Indian and Pakistani soldiers to go and die there. And the Germans and the French and the Russians might be able to share the spoils of the occupation. Is that better or worse for someone who lives in the subject nations of empire? And that's for y'all to decide. What is better? The fact that we all know what is happening is that there's a system of economic disparity that is being entrenched in the world today. And it isn't an accident that 580 billionaires in the world have greater income than, I think, 170 of the poorest countries. But the fact is, the disparities in the world are huge. And the disparities are not between rich countries and poor countries, but between rich people and poor countries. So what do we do about it? We understand a few things. One is that the system of electoral democracy as it stands today is premised on religious acceptance of nation state, and also the system of corporate globalization. The system of corporate globalization is premised on the fact that liquid capital can move through poor countries at an enormous scale, dictating their agendas, dictating economic policies, by insinuating and inserting itself into those economies. And that capital requires coercive powers of the nation state to retain the revolt in the servants' quarters. But it ensures that individual countries cannot stand up to the project of corporate globalization, which is why you have even people like Lula of Brazil or Mandela of South Africa, who were giants in the opposition, but reduced to dwarfs on the global stage, blackmailed by the threat of capital flight. And there we have it. Wealth is a weapon of mass destruction. War is a weapon of mass distraction. When I keep on saying that Mandela sold us out, that is what I mean. In the face of white monopoly capital, Mandela bent the knee. Okay, I'll get off here just now, as soon as I finish this paragraph. So theoretically, the only way to confront this is with what all of us are involved with, which is the globalization of dissent, the joining of hands of people who do not believe in empire. We have to join hands across countries, continents, and in very specific ways to stop this, because it isn't inevitable. globalization. It isn't signed by specific contracts with specific signatures and specific governments and companies. We have to bring them all to their knees. And that is where I will stop for today. Unfortunately, we cannot have a discussion because people first all the time. Our friend needs us. Let's see how they're doing. Please remember, eat something, take your meds, drink water. Remember to smash the motherfucking patriarchy, eat all the white men. Remember to be kind to each other, especially yourselves. And if you don't eat meat, please feel free to compost them, because we feed our oppressors to the land. And I love you all. Thank you so, so, so much for being here, for the discussion, for all the tappity taps, the likes and everything. Remember, I do these readings for free. So if you can hit up this $90 goal for the day, my links are in my link tree. And I am going to go and check on my baby Hayden. Love you all. See you all tomorrow. Same time, different book. And